is at risk for contracting tuberculosis.
An outbreak of measles, a highly contagious measles that began with an inmate at the Eloy Detention Center, has now grown to 11 confirmed cases.
And now state, county health officials are working to try to stop it from spreading further.
Breitbart reports a flesh-eating tropical disease is ravaging the war-torn Middle East after Islamic State destruction created the ideal breeding conditions. The parasitic disease called cutaneous leishmaniasis, also known as the Aleppo evil, is caused by bites from tiny infected sandflies which thrive in the squalid conditions left in the wake of the Islamic State terror and conflict. The number of cases has shot up from just 6 in 2012 to thousands just a year later. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported that the disease has recently begun to flourish in Syria's neighboring countries. The time has come to shut down George Soros' social justice warriors wreaking havoc on the narrative. Freedom of speech is needed now more than ever. Ignorance can't be the darkened midnight path we lead our families and fellow Americans down. This trail winds its way towards certain doom, emboldened by our own inaction. John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
So, Matt, Colonel Smith-Mac, thank you for coming on. Tosh Plumley's here as well. You guys just pop in and take control here of the broadcast at the bottom of the hour and just get the info out. Because this is short and sweet, not focusing in on the story. Folks know about it. Our audience does, but how to get reportage on the shipment that's about to happen or has happened.
Hey, Mr. Jones, it's Matt Smith-Mac. Yeah, and I wanted to say also, Kent Terry said he'll be listening today. I let him know.
Fantastic. I want to thank him for his courage. So bottom line, tell us about the shipment. What's about to happen? What do we do?
Bottom line, sir, there's a shipment went. We let Congress know, House Oversight, let them know. Nothing. They did not act on that information. So the shipment went into Mexico, got on a train, went southeast to a port, and then God knows where after that.
And this was a few days ago, because you said it was at the end of the month. This was a few days ago.
This would have been the 23rd of this month. Yes, sir.
Because last time you were on, you said it was imminent. You weren't exactly sure when. So now it's happened. Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go.
Yes, sir. Another shipment in about 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks. Again, letting Congress know, letting them know there's an individual willing and able to help them. Kent Terry knows this person. William Lajeunesse knows this person. All they need to do is engage with this person, and I think it's that one area that the federal government, the executive branch, utilized to execute fast and furious in these kind of operations. But for some reason, the legislative branch seems reticent to want to access this domain that is we have a unique insight and opportunity to get into.
So this would blow Fast and Furious, Hillary, the whole system to kingdom come politically, and Congress won't act on it.
Well, sadly, it appears that way.
Wow, well, this is just such a huge deal, and I knew that was coming up at the end of the month, so I wanted to get you on. So this has now happened, and it's just ongoing. Have you received any other threats, Colonel?
No other threats. I mean, the kind of the friendly warnings from people who are concerned, saying, "Hey, back off. You don't want to be found face down in a gutter somewhere." But this is too important. As I said before, in the first time on your show, we're citizens, not subjects. And as a Marine, Brian Terry deserves my full effort and faith to make sure closures come to him and his family.
Well, sure. What if they're shipping 5-year-old kids next? Which the UN does. Are we supposed to just let them ship little kidnapped kids out? I mean, how long do we sit here and watch crime committed? Let's go to Tosh Plumley, famous whistleblower. Tosh, you've been helping break this wide open because folks knew you had the courage to talk about it. What's the bottom line for listeners and viewers out there that Congress stood down and let this happen?
Okay, let me back up here and see if I can get a little bit of background of how Matt and I got together. 4 years ago on your program, we mentioned exactly what we're covering now. We talked about guns going across the border to Mexico, which was all up and over and above Fast and Furious. That Fast and Furious was a cutout for an international gun running operation that was being filtered through Mexico to the Middle East and into Gaddafi's bunkers. That's been documented before the fact. We also documented on your program and other programs and on my Facebook page that monies were going back to Hillary Clinton from foreign donations of people that was receiving weapons from our arsenals that was approved by the Direct Commercial Sales Program, Blue Lantern Report. This was all documented. Today, on a Huffington Post, briefly put out an article that confirmed information that went back 4.5 years ago, which was covered on your program and also on John B. Wells' program on Coast to Coast on November the 2nd, 2013. These were documented, vetted information. That information was also, at that point in time, turned over to the U.S. Senate, the Congress, Trey Gowdy, and Grassley in the form of 11 Benghazi questions that made direct references back to the gun running operation, which was legal at that point in time, but it was going across Mexico to the Mexican Army. The Mexican Army was filtering a percentage of those weapons off and sending those weapons to the drug cartel, which was proven when Joaquin Guzman was arrested, and some of those weapons ended up in his safe house. Now, what got the current situation between Matt and I together, his investigation, Brian Terry's investigation, and my investigation, all three dovetailed.
And welcome back. Joining me in studio now is David Knight. We're going to break down the insanity that has become the Libertarian Party. Now, this weekend, they held the Libertarian National Convention, and I got to say, it seems only John McAfee is holding on to the principles of the party. We see him playing the clown, but also playing to the establishment.
That's true. And of course, John McAfee is kind of a wild and dangerous character, but he held to the principles more than anybody else. And he even said, hey, am I crazy? I don't think we can win this, but I can use this to focus attention at the local level. That's really what they should be doing with this, is focusing attention at the local level. But at the same time this happened, we had a tweet come out from Bill Kristol, who is part of, I guess you could call him the leader of the Never Trump movement. And he came out with this tweet. He said, just a heads up, over this holiday weekend, there will be an independent candidate, an impressive one, with a strong team and a real chance. And so a lot of people said, oh, is he talking about the Libertarians? He said independent, and he is a neocon. He really hates libertarian principles. But of course, he wants to see Hillary over Donald Trump. So would he throw these out? Is this a real issue? Can this happen? And when we took a look at this, and we've got the article that's up on INFOWARS.com, we'll talk about it in just a moment. Is it really going to be a factor in the election? First of all, Leanne, this is a brokered convention, and it always is a brokered convention. They hold their convention quite a bit early because they want to, it's really a requirement in order to get 50 state ballot access. And that's what's really valuable about becoming the Libertarian Party nominee. There's not any other party that even comes close to getting 50 state ballot access. This is why the Republican establishment is interested in taking over the Libertarian Party with these two former governors who are rhinos from blue states, if you want to put it that way. Now, it took 2 ballots for both Johnson and Weld to get in. There's a lot of people there who smell a rat. And we're going to tell you what that rat smells like, what that rat looks like. Many of the people in the LP really understand this is a sellout. It's a compromise of the principles of the party. Let's look at what Gary Johnson said back in October, this last October, why I would run for president. Of course, he did this 4 years ago as a Libertarian nominee. What he said in this was, he said, unfortunately, Rand Paul, in his quest to have one foot in the Libertarian camp and the other in the establishment Republican museum, has emerged with a vague mix of positions that is clearly not compelling. There is a price to be paid for selling out, and he is paying it. Well, I would say that it's not the keeping one foot in the Republican establishment museum that he's talking about, but Gary Johnson is keeping at least one, maybe more feet in the Democrat social justice establishment.
Right.
And he thinks that he's going to get the Bernie Sanders socialists and the Never Trump conservatives to follow him. I don't think that's going to happen. No. Take a look at his approach of what he's going to do. And of course, this is a story that was up on INFOWARS.com this weekend. Gary Johnson's plan to beat Trump, simply call him a racist, as if that hasn't been done before. And he's actually, according to some early polls, he's actually attracting more votes away from Hillary than Trump. Now, it's too early to know anything in the polls. And of course, these polls were taken before William Weld came on board. However, Johnson continually brags about the connection that he has with Bernie supporters and even with Hillary Clinton. He says, when I take the poll at I side with, he said, I side 73% of the time with Sanders on issues, 63% of the time with Clinton on issues. And of course, Trump, you're not going to do very well if you take that side. Understand, this is a very biased site. 9 of the questions out of 60 that you can ask, that they'll ask you there, 9 of those questions, they say, well, we don't really know what Donald Trump's position is on this. So regardless of whether your answer is yes or no, they're going to say you don't agree with Donald Trump. So you're going, the max you could get for Donald Trump would be 85%, but for the rest of them, you could get as high as 100%. All right, so they say Trump is ridiculous, but look at what happened at the convention. They've got a guy who put his name in nomination for chair, used it as an opportunity to get his 2 minutes of fame, stripping down to his G-string. And so how do you strip the Libertarian Party not only of its principles of freedom, but also of its dignity and its relevancy? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to strip away the support for the Second Amendment. And the platform, they say, we oppose all laws at any level of government restricting, registering, or monitoring the ownership and manufacture or transfer of firearms or ammunition. That's not what William Weld said when he was asked this by Jake Tapper on CNN.
Well, I'm a lifelong hunter and gun owner, and I don't think those proposals were out of the mainstream at all. I distinguish between, hunting guns and guns that really don't seem to have any hunting purpose or potential purpose. So that was the distinction I was drawing there.
He agrees it's about hunting.
Yeah. Now, what he was saying, the question about that was, you proposed an assault weapons ban. His response was, well, I'm a lifelong hunter and I distinguish between hunting guns and guns that don't have that purpose. That's what he thinks of the Second Amendment. And then he goes on to say,
read it.
That's right, Johnson and I can find common, there's nothing in the Second Amendment about hunting. He says we can find common ground. I guess they can, because several libertarian sources are pointing out that after he got the nomination, the guy who ran second to him presented him with a replica of George Washington's pistol, which he threw in the trash. They retrieved that and gave it back to the second place finisher, Austin Peterson. He's not saying anything about it because it's more important to stand for party unity, to get the political side out there than it is to stand for principles anymore. But let's take a look at how they have trashed and stripped the Libertarian Party of another one of its key principles, private property. This came up in the debate. We'll call this Nazi cakes. Here's a clip.
Governor Johnson has stated that he believes that bakers should be forced to bake wedding cakes for people that they disagree with, homosexual couples. And this is a big problem because we're running for president as a libertarian.
In quoting you? Yes, but I think that if you discriminate on the basis of religion, I think that that is a black hole. Look, I think you should be able to discriminate for stink or you're not wearing shoes or whatever. But I'll tell you what, if we discriminate on the basis of religion, to me, that's doing harm to a big class of people.
You see how he switches that around? He's talking about discriminating against people because of religion, discriminating against Christian bakers. And of course, the very beginning of the LP platform has always said this: individuals are sovereign over their own lives. No one should be forced to sacrifice his or her values for the benefit of others. And yet Gary Johnson wants to coerce people with government for what he sees as a social benefit. It's actually part of the LGBT agenda. He went on to say this.
And right
should
now,
should a Jewish baker be required to bake a Nazi wedding cake?
I think Muslims right now in this country, Muslims in this country would be banned by all sorts of businesses right now because it would be the popular thing to do.
So the Jewish baker should have to bake the cake for the Nazi wedding.
That would be my contention.
There
yes.
You go.
And the example that I cited was how about the example I cited is how about the utility.
Still gets the nomination.
Utility that is privately owned, and because it's the only market.
Okay, let's stop it right there. Total non sequitur. He goes off and saying, well, what if you had a public utility that wouldn't sell power to somebody because they're gay or because they're Muslim? I mean, it's an absurd example. And a public utility is a government-granted monopoly. It's a government-granted monopoly. It's not a private property, right. Okay? Let's talk about the economy, because what he's doing here socially, they say we're socially liberal and we're economically conservative, okay? But what they've done is they've taken the worst of both parties. They've taken the economic fascism of the Republican Party and combined it with the intolerant social engineering of the Democrats. But let's talk about globalism, because this is what the libertarians don't understand. This is where he is in sync with the rest of the party in terms of free trade and open borders. I want to play this clip of what William Weld, who is now going to be the VP candidate, said about NAFTA.
Some of the stuff that he's running on, I think, is absolutely chaotic. I'm going to do this to Mexico. Okay, that's a violation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is the supreme law of the land. It's a treaty. We signed it. I'm going to do this to China, no questions asked. Okay, that's a violation of the World Trade Organization rules, exposing us, the United States, to sanctions there. So we would be the rogue nation.
Okay, so you understand that he sees these treaties as being the supreme law of the land. They are not the supreme law of the land. The